per game on the ground. So, they're having great success at stopping the run. And, they've played some pretty good backs, Kerryon Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, and they haven't given up a 100-yard rusher in 8 straight games. That's going to be a big test this week with Dalvin Cook, who, of course, is second in the league in yards gained on the ground behind Christian McCaffrey. But I think that Minnesota Vikings line's a little banged up. The rookie center is injured, Garrett Bradbury, and he's even struggling before he suffered a shoulder injury. They're going to be without their starting guard, Josh Klein. And I just think the Eagles' defensive line is going to probably dominate this game and stop the run and make Kirk Cousins beat them. And that's where you're running the trouble with the Eagles is with their cornerbacks. They're going to get Sidney Jones back this week. He missed last week's game with a hamstring injury. I'm not sure how good he is anyway when fully healthy. But, obviously Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs are going to test these corners. And the Eagles are going to have to pressure Kirk Cousins. When Kirk Cousins is pressured, he does tend to throw interceptions. The Eagles have 6 interceptions this season already as a defense. And Zach Brown, the Eagles linebacker who played in Washington with Cousins the last 2 years, said yesterday to me and a couple others in the locker room that Kirk Cousins is careless with the ball. That's the one thing he noticed when he was in Washington. They want to put the ball in Kirk Cousins' hands to see what he can do. And, I think that plays to the Eagles' strength is the pass rush in this game against, like I said, that offensive line. And I think the Eagles are going to win this game. I think it might be close. It's obviously it's in Minnesota, but I think the Eagles' defense will be okay in this game.
Marvin, the BS Sports Show also covers the Browns and the Bears. Talk with us. Bears are coming out really good. They've had a good showing. But the Browns are a little bit disappointing. We talked about this last week, and we talked about the week before. Maybe we just had too much hype and too much expectations for the Cleveland Browns. But your two teams, the Browns and the Bears, what say you, sir?
Well, I think the Bears are happy to be on a bye week this week. You'll get some time to work with Chase Daniel, a little more time to heal Mitchell Trubisky. For the Browns, I mean, it's an offense that's totally gotten away from what they did that was successful last year. Baker Mayfield held on to the ball way too long. And I think a lot of that is that between Baker Mayfield and Freddie Kitchens, they're trying to figure out ways to get Odell Beckham Jr. more involved. And that a lot of times it's had Baker holding the ball too long, and their offensive line is not good. The week before when they beat the Ravens, they ran the ball, and they ran it down their throats, and they kind of got away from that a little bit this week. And that's also what San Francisco had their defense on the field a ton. Now, not that their defense is stopping anybody, but they were on the field a whole bunch. There's a lot of issues with this offense. And, the loss of David and Joke to the tight end early on didn't help things at all. But this offense is more from what it was last year, and it's something that's not very good right now. Baker's got to get the ball out quick. If they're going to get Odell more involved, not to always have to be the home run ball, get him involved in those short passes, which they were very successful with last year, with not only their wide receivers, but with their running backs, and get the ball out of Baker's hands quick because this offensive line can't block anybody.
Joining us now to help me play the homer card is Tony Donahue from the great city here in Indianapolis. Tony Donahue, Indy on Twitter, and best free agent out there in the local market. If you guys need a stud of a sports guy, he's your guy. Tony D podcast, check him out. But Tony, what are your thoughts this week? We saw Andrew Luck at the Colts complex. Let's put on our tinfoil hat a little bit here. I kind of think it's like I broke up with my girlfriend, but I'm still hanging out with her. I kind of just felt like that it put a shadow over the leadership of Jacoby Brissett. Not that there's anything wrong with Luck coming to the Colts complex. I'm sure that does something for morale and a great win against Kansas City. But let's talk about the Colts. But, I mean, should we pay attention to Luck being at the Colts complex this week?
No, I mean, I think the only thing that I saw in that was just how still yoked up he looked and how ripped and big he looked. I think he was there to do some charity work during the bye week, which was probably already pre-scheduled. And we all know Andrew Luck like we think we do. He's a great guy. He honors commitments, and he loves to do charity work. So I think it was nothing more than a charity work. Stop and say hello to everybody. There happened to be a picture taken. Was very impressed with the Colts' performance last week. I don't think anybody really expected that. It'll be interesting to see what Kansas City does against another tough defense, which is something we haven't said about the Colts defense in a long time. But we'll see what the Chiefs can do tomorrow against the Texans. That's going to be another battle for Patrick Mahomes because we know how great the Texans defense can be. And they had a keen eye on what the Colts did in limiting Patrick Mahomes last Sunday night.
And you're part of the local media here, and you hear what I hear, but we're hearing that Frank Reich is the best coach that the Colts have had since Tony Dungy.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly made the adjustments he needs to make. He's got Matt Eberflus running that defense very well right now. But, again, you're only as good as your last game. And remember 2 weeks ago we were sitting here saying, oh, well, we're questioning them because they didn't pick up a home win against the Raiders, and the Raiders aren't supposed to be that good. So I think the jury's still out on that. He's a great coach. He's a great offensive mind. He's ballsy. He doesn't mind going for it, which I like. But to compare him to Tony Dungy, I think we all need to maybe pump the brakes a little bit on that.
Okay, and I agree, but I think that he's certainly in the conversations. And Ed, we're going to get into these other games here, but Frank Reich very well from his time with the Eagles. But again, here in local media, a lot of people, hot takes, are saying he's the best coach since Tony Dungy. What are your thoughts?
Well, I've made my feelings known on Frank, many weeks on this show, and I am a big fan of Frank Reich. I think he's a terrific coach, and he was just as big a part of that Eagles Super Bowl win as anybody else on that coaching staff and in that locker room. I just think that he's a very mature coach. I think he's able to adjust whatever his philosophies are offensively and defense with the personnel that he has on hand. I mean, you're kind of seeing that this year. He's not relying on Jacoby Brissett as much. He's really given that running game a chance to flourish. He's sticking with it. And that's not always easy to do as a head coach. But, he's playing to what his team's strengths are, whereas last year when Luck was healthy and threw, 39 touchdown passes, he played to Luck's strengths. So I just think what makes Frank a good coach is not only his maturity, his understanding of the game, but just being able to adapt and be adaptable in game and through the off season when he can identify what his team is going to be able to do best, and then he plays to those strengths. So I'm really happy he's having a success, and I know that I'm not the only one who feels that strongly about Frank Reich in Philadelphia, having covered him here. I know a lot of others feel the same way about him.
Ed Kracz is the beat writer for the Philadelphia Eagles. Check his work out on Ed Kracz on SI.com. Ed, we go across the pond. The Panthers, my other team that I have to root for, I'm obligated to. But I tell you what, Allen is making a statement, and I think that we're to a point where maybe we're having a different conversation where the Panthers are going away from Cam Newton, and we'll see what happens. I mean, he might pull an Andrew Luck. And, of course, former Colts coach Bruce Arians, the Buccaneers, a lot of ups and downs with them. They're across the pond. The Buccaneers have the home field, if you will, but the Panthers and the Buccaneers in London.
I picked the Panthers to win their division at the start of the year, and I was really, when they started out the way they did, I looked kind of stupid for doing that. But I like the way they're playing under Kyle Allen. I really do. And the Bucs are kind of up and down. They had a good game a couple weeks ago, and then last week they go to New Orleans and they kind of lay an egg against the Saints. I kind of thought maybe they were finding their groove under Bruce Arians. So, I don't know what kind of Bucs team's going to show up this week, but I do like the way the Panthers are playing under Kyle Allen. So, I think the Panthers are kind of a team that's taken off now. And Christian McCaffrey, what can you say? I mean, that guy probably should be in the MVP conversation by the end of the year, but, it always seems like that award goes to a quarterback. But, I think Christian McCaffrey could easily win, the MVP award this year, the way he's playing.
Talking to my son, and, of course, they're embedded in the Carolina Panthers because they live there, but they're really worried about McCaffrey and how injury prone that he is. So we'll see if that happens. But but on the safe side, I picked up his backup just in case for fantasy football and put him in my depth. Mo from the BS Sports Show, Mo Radio Show on Twitter. Check him out. Redskins at the Dolphins. Dolphins tanking for Tua, but not a lot to talk about with this game. But it's the next one in line. What are your thoughts, sir?
I think I'd rather have people beating a dead fish for 3 hours than have to sit down and be subjected to this game. There is absolutely no entertainment value to this game whatsoever. You can actually go to the Dolphins Redskins game cheaper than you can go to the Miami Zoo on Sunday. So I actually hope that they tie and neither one wins.
Tony, Donahue for the Tony D podcast, Saints at the Jags. I mean, going back to the Eagles, they thought they had Johnny O. St. Nick. That's unfortunate because I really do like Nick Foles as a quarterback. But, man, are they in love with their quarterback in Jacksonville, and they bring in the Saints, and they're ready to go.
Yeah, it looks like Jalen Ramsey's going to return. Gardner Minshew's done exactly what he's needed to do. And I like the Jaguars in this game. It seems like the Saints, all their games have been elevated this year. There's been dramatic. They've gone down to the wire. You remember the Rams game, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game. I like the Jaguars to pull this one out in the low-scoring contest.
I tell you what, I love the meme. I know it's all in fun-spirited, guys, but I love the meme that showed Minshew and Nick Foles. Nick Foles got his arm around Minshew or whatever, and he says, "Now this is how a backup quarterback it does." I could not laugh at that, Ed.
Yeah.
This is how you become a good backup quarterback. Let's talk about the Ravens, Ed. The Ravens host the Bengals. Bengals, certainly nothing exciting happening there. And, well, Ravens depends on what week the Ravens decide to play football. Ed, Bengals and Ravens.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really say for sure the Ravens will win this game after what Cleveland did to Baltimore, going in there a couple of weeks ago and, putting up 40-plus points on them. So, but, the Browns roster is infinitely more talented than Cincinnati's. I keep waiting for that fire sale.
You mean Bengals?
The Bengals to see. Yeah, the Bengals. Yeah. That fire sale's coming sooner or later, and they just might be the worst team. I know they have to play the Dolphins yet, and that'll be another stinker. But they could go winless, or they could win one or two games. Either way, they're going to be taken in the top 3 in the draft, and they'll probably go after a quarterback. There's some good quarterbacks out there. You mentioned Tua. You have Jake Fromm. I don't know. I guess he's eligible for Georgia to come out. Jake Herbert out at Oregon. I mean, there's going to be some good quarterbacks that are going to be available. But yeah, the Bengals fire sale, I think, should probably be starting real soon. Trade deadline's October 29th. That's creeping up. It'll be, really the only interest in them is, where's AJ Green going to go, and maybe Geno Atkins gets dealt too. But they need to, they need to start selling off some of these players and get some draft picks to start building for the future with their new head coach.
All right, guys, we only got a couple minutes left, and so we need to wrap it up because of the Final Four in the MLB. We've talked to Tony a little bit in the last segment about the Final Four, but we'll start with you, Mo. You've got the Yankees and the Astros and my beloved Cardinals and the Nationals. The Cardinals really put the Braves to sleep, and the Braves did what the Braves do in October, and that's what they do called choking. I don't know if they choked or not, but that was the best Game 5. I mean, I turned on the radio, put it in my ears on the way home. I'm about a 45-minute drive from my office to my house. By the time I got to my house, we were at 10-0, the most points scored in a MLB playoff game ever in the history of MLB. So my Cardinals shut down the Braves, and obviously the Astros shut down the Rays, and just the Yankees swept the Twins. Interesting stat I heard this week: 16 consecutive games in the playoffs that the Twins have lost to the Yankees. So, what are your thoughts on the Final Four, Mo?
Well, evidently the Cardinals, they decided to blow their wad against the Atlanta because they decided to take a day off last night. Being a diehard Cubs fan, I'm 100% cheering for the Nationals. It looks like a different Nationals team than those the past few years. And ironically, they've advanced in the playoffs, minus Bryce Harper. So it's a good story, and at the end of the day, I think that they possess probably the best pitcher in their league in Max Scherzer, and that could give them the edge. As far as the American League goes, power hitting against power pitching, which is going to be fun. Justin Verlander and Garrett Cole and that crew in Houston. Not only do they pitch well, but they also they also hit the ball pretty darn well too. The Yankees, the only concern for me is can that pitching hold up for them to get through the series. This is probably going to be the World Series in most people's mind, watching this ALCS with the Yankees and Houston. I'm going to take Houston to move on. It'll be Houston and Washington in the World Series.
And what are your thoughts? And, you're a National League guy. You cover the Phillies somewhat there, and the Phillies fired their manager